Brought to you by Moonbeam Multimedia.
This is 16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning. Hello there.
Hey there.
How are your first couple days of summer break going?
Oh my gosh. I've slept so much.
Have you just been asleep?
Catching
up on all the year's lost hours?
Yeah. My schedule is just so miffed right now. I am just...
The lack of routine.
Like, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. still. And then I lay in bed and play games or whatever on my phone until like 7. And then I sleep till like 10. Last night we decided, let's have coffee at 11 p.m. because why not?
Good time
for
some
we could.
Caffeine.
So, no, I've been enjoying it. I'm definitely getting caught up. So
Yeah.
it's just now starting to hit that I'm home.
That you don't have to go back to
Yes,
school
yes.
anytime soon. Well, I'm glad that you are settling into a new routine of rest. Before we let you off the hook
I
for
thought you said arrest, and I was like, I haven't been arrested yet.
rest.
But there's still time.
Before we let you off the hook for this school year, we do have this episode and one more before we're taking a long summer break. We'll be back in the fall. This week, we're going to be talking about the Harlem Children's Zone, this nonprofit and project in New York that aims to reduce systemic poverty, tackling it through means of education. But before we do, did you have some announcements for our listeners?
I do.
Oh, okay. What are they?
It's my turn.
Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. This is your friendly reminder to sign up for the 16 to 1 podcast email newsletter to get the latest updates, episode announcements, resources, and workshop offerings from Moonbeam Multimedia.
That's us.
How'd I do?
You did great.
If you value our explorations into the art of teaching and the science of learning, please consider becoming a supporter of 16 to 1. By completing the backer form on our website, you're helping us to produce research-driven stories that challenge and improve our educational systems.
You sure are.
And lastly, if there's a story in your local educational community that you think we should cover, we'd love to hear about it. Please contact us using our website or write at hello@16to1.com.
The Harlem Children's Zone is a 100-ish block area in Central Harlem where an educational philosophy of place-based intervention is being played out. Founded by a charismatic social entrepreneur named Geoffrey Canada, the Harlem Children's Zone is a nonprofit pursuing an extraordinarily ambitious goal: break cycles of intergenerational poverty in Central Harlem with an all-encompassing cradle-to-career support pipeline for students and their families that empowers kids from birth through college graduation. Canada's commitment to the Harlem Children's Zone is deeply entangled with his own upbringing in the South Bronx, where his mother, a substance abuse counselor, navigated structural barriers as a single mom in search of a promising education for her sons. Canada's transition from community organizer to social entrepreneur was driven by repeated realizations that incremental improvements were insufficient to the task of overcoming systemic neglect. In Canada's view, true change requires a holistic restructuring of the environment surrounding the child. Evaluating the impact of such intensive interventions may require us to stretch beyond conventional educational benchmarks. While increased graduation rates, literacy levels, and math proficiencies are often cited as primary indicators of progress, the promise of addressing generational poverty requires deeper interrogation. Are these metrics capturing social mobility or only academic compliance? If the Harlem Children's Zone is a scalable blueprint for dismantling systemic poverty, as Barack Obama and other politicians and reformers have hoped, we may want to track other indicators of success: long-term health outcomes, intergenerational wealth building, and the cultivation of community agency. Let us dive into this program.
I'm going to call it the HCZ.
I kept trying to shorten it to that, but it was just as hard for me to say HCZ as it was.
It's not that much easier, but I think it will be. So we're not going as far back as you would like.
Not to the early hundreds BC this time?
Only to 1970.
Okay, well that's back enough.
So it started as what was called the Reedland Centers for Children and Families. Opened its doors in 1970s, New York City's first truancy prevention program.
Okay.
The Reedland Centers for Children and Families' goal was to help get kids off the street, improve their attendance, and get their family involved in the educational process. So in 1990, Geoffrey Canada became the CEO of Reedland Centers, and he oversaw a one-block pilot that provided comprehensive critical support to children and families residing within that area. 7 years later, planning for what would become the Harlem Children's Zone project began. In 2002, the HCZ launched a 10-year strategic plan. The HCZ committed to steadily and systematically expanding its program and services from 24 blocks to 60 blocks, and ultimately to 97 blocks in 2010.
Yeah, their current literature has them hovering at right around 100 blocks.
In 2004 and then again in 2005, they opened their charter schools.
Promise Academy?
The Promise Academy.
Got
and
it.
I think the first one's called Promise Academy 1, and then I think it's called Promise Academy 2.
Yes, I think they were not
That's
overly
okay.
creative
Nope,
with
that's
the school
fine.
names.
Let's not waste time on things we don't need. And those charter schools, which we'll talk about more later, do service K through 12 students. So they are an entire system in themselves. So today, the HCZ now serves tens of thousands of children and adults and counting. They service more than 100 blocks of Harlem, and in 2012, they graduated their first Promise Academy class from high school. As Chelsea mentioned earlier, President Obama was really impressed with the work that the HCZ was doing. And so they created what was called Obama's Promise Neighborhoods program. Because of how impressed he was, he tried to direct funding to replicate the approach in other cities around the U.S. by carving out what were called children's zones. I actually read a little about this. In the early days, you had to apply to be considered for these children's zones. And I read that Cleveland applied a couple of times and they never actually ended up getting it. But then I did read where a school down on the Ohio River near Athens, Ohio, was one of the Promise neighborhood schools
Interesting.
that was used.
Yeah, I think he also was interested in replicating it in Chicago. I mean, he saw something in this program, was very excited about it. I want to go back in time and ask him, what was it that you saw that got you so excited? Not that there's not something there, but I think as we talk through this, we'll see that maybe a lot of this hinges on the leadership of Geoffrey Canada. And he's a great hype man and spokesperson for this project, for its impact.
Certainly.
But yeah, it has been interesting to see to what extent any of the successes here are replicable in other places.
Yeah. So according to our website today, if you were to click on their education and youth programs, you would see that they have it set up by bands of students and learners that they're supporting. There's the early childhood options, which are like 0 to 3 years old, toddlers. They have what's called baby college. I'll talk about baby college more later.
Baby college.
And then also...
It's where you send babies to college,
it's
right?
where, finally, CCP could not start soon enough. Got to get our credits in, kids. So other than for early childhood, they have the Promise Academy charter schools, which, like I said, service K through 12 learners. They also have a series of youth programs. They have what's called the Peacemakers, which is grades K through 8. They have a couple of other systems as well. Community centers, technology centers, civic engagement areas. So the next thing on our show notes is a map. Can you kind of run us through, for listeners, what this map shows, since you're the New York tour guide Barbie here?
Yeah, we'll put the map in the show notes. It's from the Harlem Children's Zone website. We'll link to it, but it's just kind of outlining where these various services and community centers and all these wraparound entities that are part of this zone, where they're situated within Central Harlem. This is right across the street from, if you look to the, I guess, northwest corner of this map.
Our cardinal directions, huh?
Off to the left top side, beyond that green blob that is Morningside Park, is Columbia University. And that's where I was attending. And it was like kind of just right across Morningside Park from
like
this.
neighbors, basically, with this.
Yep. And the Harlem Children's Zone recruited very heavily from teachers in my program when I was doing graduate school at Teachers College. Yeah, I did have some overlap with this, but you can see basically it's a chart kind of just outlining where these different community centers and charter schools and after school programs, this different sort of social network where all the pieces of that are laid out.
Can I talk about baby college now?
Yeah, I would love to hear about baby college.
Okay.
What's baby college?
So just to talk about a few of their program highlights. Baby college. It's as good as it sounds. It's perfectly named. I hope they never change it. So it's a 9-week workshop that engages new and expectant parents and caregivers through the ins and outs of early childhood development. It's created by pediatricians. So the information that they're receiving is what pediatricians in the area suggest that people know for an infant to a 3-year-old. So it's kind of a baby crash course, if you will.
Okay.
One of their other programs is called the Harlem Gyms. They're a preschool program that's focused on literacy, math, and social emotional learning. They also talk to learners about their fitness, their health, and nutrition.
Yeah, health and wellness is it gets paired into a lot of these programs.
Well, I saw that on the NFL's website actually had a link to the HCZ. So they must do one of those like play things that the NFL heads up every year. They must be one of their partner schools or something like that. Yeah. I did see that on the NFL's website. Okay, so they have charter schools as well. They're called the Promise Academy, and they service K-12 scholars, as they call them repeatedly on their website.
Yes, they do refer to basically every student who comes through their program as a scholar.
Yeah, baby college scholars.
Baby college scholars.
Yeah, okay. I will jokingly say things like, come on, learners, and then I think they're going to kill me. So maybe the little ones take to being called scholars.
Baby fellows.
Not my tenured baby. Okay.
Baby dissertations.
Baby dissertation.
Okay. I'm distracting.
Not my
Please
baby
continue.
annotated bib.
Baby bibs.
Baby bibs. Okay.
The charter schools, though, are kind of the core part of this programming.
Yes.
This whole pipeline that gets set up, it's a lottery-based system. You get into this lottery right when they're born, and you hope that they luck into this whole pathway that gets set out
Yes.
after they're admitted. But the charter school system that they have integrated into this zone is kind of like the crowning endpoint where all of this is getting funneled into. So tell us about these academies.
So their website says this. Our approach, we address the whole child, doing whatever it takes to ensure our scholars get to and through college, build successful careers, and reach their true potential. We offer free tuition, access to technology, uniforms, and much more. Now, based on my research, they claim to have done the following. This is their verbiage from their website. We've enrolled nearly 100% of our scholars in college. We've closed the achievement gap, and we've helped our graduates build successful careers and become conscientious citizens.
Okay.
Now, my next note is this word salad? Are we just throwing words together that mean something? What do we have for the proof? Is it just buzzwords? Okay. So as an educator reading this, my alarm bells are going off slightly, only because I would want the data that supports any of those claims. Because this is a school system in which you apply via lottery, those students who aren't chosen are just placed on a wait list. And this kind of process for education, I think, is very foreign to us in rural Ohio.
Like a really competitive lottery system?
Right. Like, we don't have too much of that in our area at all. This is an entirely new beast to be dealing with. To understand the lottery, how it works, how even siblings don't always get into the same charter schools, things like that. So it's very complicated. But for the people in New York public schools, they would totally understand this because this is commonplace for them.
I did want to capture just a couple of their other wraparound programs, too. They also offer after-school and summer support through the Harlem Peacemakers, a program called A Cut Above. That's like enrichment activities for STEM, civics, art, health, and nutrition. They offer specialized programming for students interested in the arts or media or other technical fields. They also have a college success office. They call this the final critical link in the cradle to career pipeline. This is an office that's supposed to provide some specialized support to transitioning students from high school to graduation, to degree attainment, and past that. They also have a kind of social support network, including community centers, tax and financial literacy programs, leadership development opportunities, and other kinds of community and grassroots organizing centers and programs and systems, all in Central Harlem and all connected through this same Harlem Children's Zone organization.
So I went through the New York Public Schools grade card equivalent, essentially, for the state of New York. A problem that I ran into while researching about the HCZ charter schools is that, one, there's about 12 years worth of data on the website, but the ways in which they quantify the data changed about 3 years ago. So I was looking at
post-COVID changes.
it seems to be, but I don't know if it's just that.
I mean, we've just had all kinds of trouble, really, gathering
Right.
gathering national and state level education
Yes.
data post-COVID.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Also, it's a charter school, so they're treated differently than public schools. Their data processing, it seems to exclude some things, whereas other public schools do include it in their data. So I'm not sure how much of this is the difference in just data concerns as far as like, did we miss something?
Apples and oranges.
Exactly.
Okay.
I just went ahead and included the 24-25 screenshot here in our show notes of the Promise Academy 2 charter high school.
Okay.
A couple of data points that I thought were interesting. There were only 44 seniors in this class.
Small
Now,
graduating classes. Okay.
Yes. So at least for the second charter school. I was focusing on the instruction and performance portion of their grade card.
So the part you would be evaluated on if you
So
were
I went
working
where
in the system.
I'm most comfortable. I go where I know, okay?
Okay.
So a couple of important details. Graduation rate. They had a 93% graduation rate within 4 years.
What's your school's 4-year graduation rate?
Probably just a smidge higher than that.
Okay. So comparable to
I would
what
say
you're used to.
comparable.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in Manhattan, that average is 79%. In the city, it's an 81%. So we're seeing 14-ish points above Manhattan's, 12 points above the cities. So those are good indicators. Now, in the college and career readiness portion of this is where I thought this information was interesting. They did not have the data for the average college and career readiness score for students at this school after 4 years in high school, which I thought was really interesting because their whole thing is college and career readiness, and this isn't reportable data or isn't...
Well, there wasn't a comparison group for this, and I don't know what
Which
that...
I assume that their comparison group is another charter school.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a data point I would like to know. I think that would be very interesting.
Okay.
Now, another data point. Graduated from high school and enrolled in college or other post-secondary program within 6 months, 85% of their students did that. In Manhattan, that number is 65%. In the city, it's 63%. And as a comparison group, 70%. So they're 15 plus points better than other high schools as far as who has just graduated and has enrolled in a college or another program. That's a good sign. Now, this is where the data puzzles
22
me.
points higher than the whole city of New York average.
Yes.
To me, that seems significant.
So this is where the data kind of falls apart for me. Their next data point is a percentage of students who successfully completed approved college or career prep courses and exams.
Okay.
They only had a 44% completion rate for students who successfully completed approved college or career preparatory courses and exams. That is 15 points below a comparison group, 19 points below Manhattan, and 17 points below the city.
What are those approved prep courses and exams? Do we know?
We do. It's the AP. Well, one of them is AP, so college or career preparatory courses and exams.
Okay.
So they
Looks
had
like
a
regents.
list.
They have regents too.
They do have regents in the state of New York, which really messed up my data compiling because I don't need to be compiling no regents. I don't.
You don't want to talk
I
about
don't
the
want to
regents.
talk about regents. Okay. I think what this data is suggesting that there's a healthy amount of students who are leaving this charter school and are enrolling, but not as many of them are taking the classes while they're there in the building.
Yeah.
That's just so fascinating.
Well, hypothetically,
to me.
they're taking other courses, right?
I was surprised by that because their graduation rates, based on like the two colleges that most of their students end up at, one is the City University, and one is another New York
Public university.
Yeah, public university. So I think my next data point that I would dig into is to see how many of those students are transferring credits into those universities and to see if that's where those numbers would begin to climb a bit. Because I wonder if what they're taking is CCP equivalent, college credit plus equivalent, that are not approved by the state in this data. I just think that's a really interesting data point to have 15%, 17%, 19% below when their whole goal is to get them to and through college, as they say it. So,
well, okay, let me bring up something that I kind of discovered about this place during the research of it, which gets at exactly that concern about how they're measuring the successes of these programs. When the Promise Academy Middle School first started, they had this kind of rough origin story where the school administration did this controversial move of dismissing an entire class, an entire 8th grade class.
No.
In 2010. This was ostensibly because there were these years and years of persistently low test scores from this particular cohort of students. The administration of the school leaders at the time characterized a lot of these students as quote-unquote troublemakers who had disengaged families. And you have to keep in mind the sort of whole family approach is key to this children's zone programming. So they were saying that the families were disengaged, they were troublemakers. Critics were like...
That's crazy language. That is crazy
I wouldn't
language.
I wouldn't have chosen the language.
Yeah, okay.
So critics were kind of up in arms about this, obviously, because they were saying, okay, this reveals a deeper issue with this approach, which is this tendency toward institutional selection, because if you can just get rid of a difficult to serve population of students, just exempt them somehow, just say, no, we're not actually, we're just disregard, you're going to end up with a charter school that's going to have skewed educational data, outcomes. How do you evaluate outcomes if you just get rid of a class that you don't like? And you create this student body that's less representative of the community's actual needs. It masks the challenges that you're trying to address. So I think some of the data read through that you did there had a parallel concern, which is, are we just graduating them through a system designed to help them become graduated? Or are we really giving them
or what's actually
skills, the foundation for success later on in life? And even though this program has existed for decades now, it's still a relatively young program in terms of education systems and evaluating them. And
especially because it changed so much from the time it started in the 70s to now.
Yeah.
How it operates today. It's a totally new version of itself, basically.
Yeah. So I read somewhere where they said they've graduated like 1,800 students or something through college, I believe.
Yeah, they have helped more than 1,800 scholars graduate from college, earn their degrees, and build bright futures.
Okay. There are a lot of questions about how do you measure the efficacy of a program that tries to take on so much all at once. This charter school network, there's very much an attempt here to kind of bypass a bureaucratic inertia that you find in the public school system, especially in New York City. You get more curricular autonomy, you get more instructional flexibility, high dosage tutoring, extended learning days. They have a very long school day and they start earlier and go later in the school year than most of their peer organizations.
Yeah, I looked at their schedule online. They don't get out of school, like their 26-27 school year calendar was already up. They don't get out of school until I think like the last week of June, and teachers report the first week of August.
Yeah.
So they have a much shorter summer, but they have different breaks throughout.
And they have a long school day.
They do.
The scale of the Harlem Children's Zone's ambitions requires massive diversified capital streams. So we're very far beyond the standard public school appropriation in terms of budget here. And the organization does leverage significant philanthropic contributions and private partnerships to fund all of these really intensive wraparound services that public budgets don't typically cover.
No. And couldn't.
And this reliance on private wealth does raise questions about the sustainability of the model and whether it can exist independently of shifting priorities or in a different place where there perhaps aren't donors that are as motivated to fix these specific problems. Just one last note on this thing about how it works with the lottery, because we ended up watching a documentary called Waiting for Superman. I'll let you talk about that in just a minute, but the lottery was a kind of major feature of that documentary, the lottery system. A lottery to get into this pipeline does kind of ensure some element of fairness and access to those who are trying to get into that system, but it does create this profound sense of scarcity. And it leaves a lot of families that are in the Harlem Children's Zone without the support that the Harlem Children's Zone strives to provide. This Waiting for Superman documentary, this came out right around the time, like right before I was in graduate school at Teachers College. So right across the street from these neighborhoods. And everybody was talking about this. Geoffrey Canada is one of the prominent voices interviewed in this documentary. It was called Waiting for Superman. The documentary itself was quite controversial at the time. and correct me if I'm wrong, but here's my little gloss of it. It sort of positions teachers unions as the problem for protecting bad teachers with tenure. Like that's the claim of the documentary, is that the real systemic problem is
all these bad teachers that they leave in a room together
bad
who are
apples,
just wasting taxes.
Bad apples who sit in a rubber room. It's a really interesting documentary. You can tell that it has a point to make that may or may not resonate with you. Let's just say you hadn't seen it before. What did this? You're rolling your eyes a little bit. How did this documentary sit with you? Okay.
Well, I'd never seen it.
Uh-huh.
And it was like the first morning of, summer break. So I didn't really have too many.
You didn't want to hear about how public schools are just failing everyone all the time.
Yeah.
On your first day of break.
Yeah. If there was some energy I could have really used on that first day, this was it. And it was Bill Gates telling me about it, which really improved my mood. I have a lot of thoughts about this documentary. We watched it on YouTube. If you're feeling like you have too much self-worth, I would recommend watching it if you're a teacher who really wants to just humble yourself. It was interesting because one of the stories featured on it was about a girl who... her family is in Silicon Valley, and they showed clips of this, what was then, at least in this documentary, public school. And it was incredible, the most incredible campus, offerings,
decked
everything.
Out.
And I'm looking at it Lord, please. And then you have this family who's it's not good enough. And they're trying to get into this strip mall school, charter school. And you're supposed to feel some kind of way about watching someone who is already of great privilege, who would have an incredible learning opportunity at that public school in Silicon Valley, and still feels the need to go chase a charter school because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that one clip, if I'm recalling who you're thinking of, it was a young girl, the young girl with braces, and she was crying at the end. She got into one of these charters, and my heart broke watching her because a young teenage girl of that age should not have as much stress wrapped up in this whole thing as that girl very obviously did.
No.
This girl was tearful and crying and kind of falling apart because she got into this
charter school.
Yeah. And it was the same thing as we were sitting there watching. It's almost worth watching the whole documentary just for that last 15 minutes of where they're focusing on families who are sitting through these lotteries. You sit there and you watch this longish documentary advocating for these kinds of public charter networks. And then you watch the end result of families having to sit and have their fates determined by this lottery system. And it's just are we really supposed to be aspiring to this? I don't know. You watch 6-year-olds have their spirits crushed because they know their parents are so upset that they haven't gotten into this lottery for this promising education that they've been told is the key to their success. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I was just having a really crazy moment with it because I just could not believe that we were trying to basically proclaim support for a system that's breaking children's hearts in real time.
I think just the extreme privilege of it was striking to me, to go from that girl in California to then the woman that was featured in the documentary where her kid didn't get to go do the last day of school graduation because she was behind on payments, and the school wouldn't even let the daughter come in and do her thing, even though it was on the mom that the payments weren't made. So you're watching a mother grieve this educational moment for her child.
She's why are you punishing my baby because I couldn't pay, was her question, basically.
And yeah.
I do want to mention that documentary was about more than it wasn't just about the Promise Academies. It was about kind of greater systems of public charter networks. They talk about KIPP schools and a lot of other things get discussed in that documentary, but it's mainly about charter networks.
And I do want to say, though, and we did a podcast episode on this on Operation Varsity Blues, which is one of the biggest scandals as far as college acceptance concerns across the United States, about how people with privilege and wealth were gaming opportunities basically to get their students into whatever dream school of theirs. And so I can certainly see how some parent 20 years ago watched this documentary, got all worked up about little Timmy, who isn't going to get a whatever on their SAT, and then says he plays polo at Harvard and he's never, whatever it is. But it does not surprise me now to live where we live today and to see the fallout of these things.
Well, isn't it? It's a very emotionally manipulative piece of media, which really struck me watching it because at the time, I think I watched it at the time when it came out. I do not remember having the emotional reaction to it that I have now.
No, like we're both sitting there crying at the end of it because one of our kids got in the charter. And now I'm like, these kids are how old? 30?
Yeah.
Like, what are you up to today? I need to know where you've been and how was it?
Well, actually, that's a good transition. Yeah. No, sorry.
No, I'm just mad. That's all.
You're just mad?
I'm mad at that documentary.
Okay.
And I think
I'm mad at the system
I'm mad at the system.
Shows.
And also, I think what really poked me about that documentary was the guy who was, I don't know, some sort of admin out in California at this school for the charter school that was featured in Waiting for Superman. He was like, oh, we got rid of tracking because every student should be held to the same high standards and no one's going to basically pull down the group. And usually the teachers who teach the lower track of students aren't strong teachers anyways.
I knew that might ruffle your feathers slightly.
Look, I'm a really proud public educator, so I think I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I mean, that's a good transition because we can start to talk about some of these difficulties a little bit and then just trying to evaluate the success of the Harlem Children's Zone and how we do that. It often gets celebrated as this kind of triumph of social entrepreneurship. There's a scale to the ambition, and it certainly does bring friction with it. There's this intense debate exactly over what you're talking about the efficacy of this charter school model, difficulties of maintaining performance in an environment with extreme structural disadvantage. And then I think you're asking good questions about how we measure the success of these whole system approaches. Harlem itself has hugely changed in this span of years since the 1990s. Yeah. And since it's this place-based, highly localized initiative, it's all about this 100 blocks in Central Harlem. It makes you wonder, can we look at the changes in Harlem as at least partially indicative?
A reflection of
this program and what it's done, right? So, I mean, in the 90s, Harlem was in a much more difficult spot than it is now. There were thousands of sometimes abandoned but city-owned properties. There was not very much mainstream commercial activity in Harlem. Today, it's this huge economic hub with basically skyrocketing property values. Yeah. It's like this historically black neighborhood that's just been gentrified into beyond recognition, I guess I would say, for longtime residents who have been, in some cases, displaced by a lot of these changes.
Yeah, like losing the touch of the Renaissance almost at times.
Yeah,
in its identity, which is its home. It's the home of it, and that's,
There's definitely a sense in what I was reading from, and this is like reading from Harlem-based publications, often Black cultural publications. There's a sense of loss of community, loss of identity, loss of place that has happened because of the changes that have happened in Harlem since the early 90s.
In the neighborhoods, yeah.
And it's basically this question of like, okay, if you just gentrify out all of these families that can no longer afford to live here, have you really produced the change that you want to see?
And what change have you created? Yeah.
When I was there, right at the top of Morningside Park, if you kind of head across the city, across toward like LaGuardia Airport, you go across 125th Street, and that's like bisects this children's zone, right? And that corridor now, it was rezoned around 2008. It has been kind of transformed into this like high-rise commercial development, construction, get rid of all these mom and pop shops and street vendors and hair salons and everything and replace it with like Target and Banana Republic and Marshalls and Nike. Also, Columbia University initiated this massive and very controversial $6 billion expansion into this area called Manhattanville. It brought this influx of students and faculty and university infrastructure into the area. And basically what all of this has amounted to is Central Harlem's Black population dropped below 50% in the mid-2000s for the first time in nearly a century. It's this anchor community, but there's this dual economy evolving now of like longtime residents. Maybe some of them lived in rent-stabilized units or public housing or whatever it is.
For decades, yeah.
Yeah, there these super intense cost of living pressures on those people, and then just newer residents coming in to kind of take up those spaces. So,
who are willing to pay whatever the
And it's just like you know, you can't attribute all of that to anything that the Harlem Children's Zone has chosen to do or not do, but you can wonder how the approach has gone hand in hand with their goals. It just makes me wonder how to be so very careful about measuring the success of the program. It's like,
did Harlem grow up around them, or did they grow up with,
we've erased generational poverty because we've erased all of those families who experienced generational poverty in this place.
Well, and I think that graduating class I was talking about for last year was 24-25, so last school year now. It was, I think, 94% Black, and it was like 2-to-1 female to male. So I would be very curious to see how that corresponds to other...
Whether that's reflective of the neighborhood.
Of the neighborhood, of the other charter, of local publics, things like that. I think I'm still stunned by I expected much larger graduation groups. I expected seniors
bigger
graduating
classes
to be much larger than 44.
Yeah, I think there was even a choice at some point in their history where they decided not to open an additional school. They had planned to expand to other schools or something, and they made this choice. It might have been around that time of that 8th grade class that they were just like, no, that might have been the thing that tipped the scales, where they decided they decided not to get bigger so that they could focus on the quality of what they were providing first before they tried to replicate it.
Yeah, it's just hard to fathom Harlem and then one high school only graduating 45 students. That math is crazy to me. And I work at a high school where we graduated like 150 something.
Yeah.
And that was a normal class for us.
Yeah, it just underscores how very competitive this program is and how much people scrape to try to become involved in it. We have this Harlem Children's Zone system kind of in opposition to other approaches. Things like KIP is a very big, in the US at least, public charter network. So anyway, we have things like a KIP approach where it's like these isolated, we only care about academics. On the other hand, we have this whole encompassing holistic cradle to career approach. If students in the kind of academic only pathway can achieve significant gains in proficiencies, does this neighborhood-wide approach make sense as an efficient way to address educational inequity?
No.
Okay.
That's all.
Episode
Next.
over. Yeah, I really struggle with this one, but it just underscores how important it is to agree about what we're measuring, what the success metrics are.
Yeah.
If the success metrics are only like you're talking about, 4-year high school graduation rate or whatever it is, then HCZ is doing really well. If the metrics are what is your salary 4 years out, 2 years out of college graduation or 4 years out of graduation, because those are the metrics that start to speak to generational poverty, right?
It is. And also, like, this is coming back to me actually from an episode we did here with Megan Helberg, where she was talking about what a shame it is that so many schools approach it by getting you this great education and then sending you out in the world to be somewhere else instead of bringing it back home, if home is where you want to be, to do something with it. And those are the things that are like coming to mind when we talk about charter schools and these types of neighborhood-based whatever. I would also love the data of who graduated from an HCZ charter school and stayed in Harlem and made Harlem home.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Yeah.
Which isn't the only way to understand success.
It's not, but it might be the way to understand success of a program that makes these particular claims.
Right. When it's so neighborhood centric, it is about the place. Like, those are the types of questions that I would love to have answered. Are these your graduates you're employing? Are these former students who are now teachers? Are these,
They do some like alumni spotlight type things, but I think as you and I were researching this, we were both finding ourselves wanting some collateral
more
from the organization itself about
yes
these longer term success metrics, because it's like, if your goal is to transform Central Harlem is being transformed.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What is your role in it?
Yes. And what is your identity because of it, or what remains of it? So yeah, I think that's where my head is like, what is that success? What does it look like? And how much of your place can you say is a reflection of that? Because there's certainly at the point now where they have graduates who are of an age of which they could return. They could be, employed, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point in my career now where I actually work with a couple of my former students. Suddenly, I've had kids ask them, like, is it weird to come back? And I always I think what a compliment it is that you came up in this school with a lot of us as your teachers, and you value it so much that you're willing to jump in and do it with us. And I think that's such a compliment. I really do. And I wonder if the people at the Harlem Children's Zone have that same feeling. Do they see people coming back and buying in and being part of that? Or is it one of those things that you leave and that's kind of the name of the game? And I was someone who once believed that you can make home stronger by being a better you, a more successful you. And I do think in some ways that's still true. But now as someone who's moved back home after some time away, I definitely think well, isn't this the point? Wasn't I supposed to be here to be a steward of these things?
Mm-hmm. That was a good conversation. Thank you for having that with me. This is a challenge. This is a really challenging
tough
topic for me because when people care so deeply about education systems, I so want them to do well. That's not saying that this isn't doing well, but I need to just, to back up and try to look critically at the success of a system that's as ambitious as this one.
Yeah. Which is what we do with our public schools as well. I mean,
yeah,
true. The lens in which we've applied it here is no different than how we apply it to any of them.
Yeah.
There's a Taylor Swift line that's I'm so upset because I love this place so much. It's something like that. That's kind of what I know we're feeling when we're talking about processes of education and things like that. And it's not because we don't want people to learn. It's because we actually love it so much that we're worried.
Yep.
And that it bothers us. So.
And we'll talk about it all day long for years and years on a podcast.
I guess. It's the one thing we've never shut up about.
All right. Are you ready to talk about what we learned in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. What'd you learn?
Oh, mine's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Well, I've heard a lot about KIPP charter schools, and I just never knew what KIPP actually stood for. And it's Knowledge is Power program. That's what I learned.
Sure. There's a KIPP in Columbus.
Yeah, they're kind of everywhere. What did you learn?
Okay, this came from TikTok.
Oh, okay.
And the creator is at Two Pool for School.
Okay.
I wanted her to have credit. She was talking about her favorite time in history, and she said the 5th century BCE, and I started listening because I was like, Chelsea probably also has this as her favorite year.
It's a good century.
It was a good century. But I learned that Socrates, Confucius, and the Buddha were all alive at the same time, and none of them knew that the others existed. That's crazy. And you did confirm the math. There was 10 years where they all overlapped?
Yeah, maybe a decade. Well, I was looking at Socrates and Confucius specifically.
Okay.
About 10 years of overlap.
Imagine thinking you're doing something really unique and then across the world is Buddha. Come on, man. We're out here doing some good work. Did you have to do that? Anyways, I thought that was really cool. That there was a time where they were all
wandering the earth. Yeah, cool stuff. Okay, any final thoughts, parting shots?
We've only got one more episode, but as always, if you have anything for us to read or watch this summer while we're enjoying some downtime, please share that with us.
Yeah, we want book recommendations, watch recommendations.
Yeah. So,
maybe not depressing documentaries about the failure of schools on the first day of break, but other than that, we're open to suggestions, I think.
Sounds good.
Okay. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, listeners, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of 16 to 1. This show is produced by a 2-woman team. Your co-hosts Katie Day, our lead researcher and social media manager, and Chelsea Adams, that's me. I edit and produce the show, and I also make the music you hear in our episodes. Visit our website at 16to1.com for show notes and resources, or to get in touch with us. 16 to 1 is sponsored by Moonbeam Multimedia, a firm that partners with civic innovators, educators, and mission-driven organizations to help create stronger communities.
Break cycles of intergenerational poverty in Central Harlem with an all-encompassing cradle to career. We blow you up and then we launch you into the workforce.
Usually
Boom.
it's me.
mushroom cloud of career.
Flattered that this is not me because it's always me who's like, have I ever read out loud before?
My turn.
Okay.
Here I go.